Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do the beer stuff here. Stout time, baby. I'm here for it. Weldwerks Brewing. It's their Medianoche 2024 Imperial Stout, barrel aged. Full disclosure, I've had this beer. Actually, no, that's a lie. I've had this beer before. It's a different year. It was a couple years ago. And it was at a share, and it was mashed between a bunch of different beers, so I couldn't tell you anything about it. So we're going in this pretty much blind. I've seen this on shelves before. It's got a little bit of a hefty price tag, but I was feeling myself today. I saw it. It's actually like $5 less than I've ever seen it before. I said, you know what? We're doing it. We're doing it. It's the period of time between Giftmas and New Year's. Treat myself. I had a very good year, personally, professionally, beer tube wise, the whole nine. So here we go. What else we got going on here? Weldwerks Brewing Company, established 2015. Sorry, Greeley, Colorado. 12.3% alcohol by volume. Story time in the back. It says here, 2024 Medianoche is the pinnacle of patience and blending. This year's release showcases a blend of multiple recipes, including our traditional Medianoche base, wheated base, and high rye recipe. This notable blend was selected exclusively from batches of Medianoche aged 25 to 39 months. So I'm talking about 2 to 3 years. Created the oldest average age on any Medianoche blend to date. The existing aging took place in elk port cask finish bourbon, Law's Whiskey House rye whiskey, wheated Weller bourbon, Buzzard's Roost bourbon, Wild Turkey rare breed bourbon, Oak elk bourbon, Sazerac, I'm sorry for the commas, Sazerac rye whiskey, Blanton's bourbon, and Stag Junior bourbon barrels. The final beer explodes with notes of chocolate dipped orange. Okay. Salted caramel, vanilla pudding, nutmeg, toasted pecan, and rich oak. That's all we get. A couple things going on here. One, matte black bottle, murder style bottle. You're always going to want to be over with that. And just, you're getting a lot of gold on black with white. So I can dig it. I can dig the label. But it's more this. Can you hear that? A little ASMR on there. So yeah, bourbon barrel aged beer. It sounds like not a big hiss on there. Sounds like they put a ton of, they go, that is motor oil, son. Jesus Christ. The only thing that's kind of pooping me out right now and getting me a little bit hot and bothered is it looks like there's zero carbonation in this thing, but it could be carbonated. It's just so goddamn thick. But the fact that there was no hiss makes me think it's not carbonated. But man, that is thick. That might be one of the... So, I'm going to have to take a picture of this. Maybe I'll superimpose it on the review. I probably won't because I won't remember. But this is so thick and viscous that I just accidentally dropped. Actually, I'll show you. That's what I'll do. I spilled a hair of it. This might be the thickest beer I've ever seen in my life. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I spilled a drop of it, and it is so thick that it is like shaped like a button. It didn't run out. It didn't like spread out at all because it's so thick. It just stayed at like a button shape, like a dome, which is just insanity, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay. Here we go. So yeah, I mean, that is just thick on... Jesus Christ. There's no carbonation on this thing. That's got... Hopefully it drinks in a certain way. It's 12%, so I kind of need a carb on there. It's kind of got me a little irritated. But man, as far as thickness goes, it could, like I said, it could almost... So herky-jerky review. It could be so thick that the carbonations have a hard time coming out because there's a tiniest bit of carb around the edges in the center. But man, that is blue blocker thickness. Like the legs on this, you could probably see it. That's how usually legs don't really show up on camera like that. But you can probably tell there's a decent amount of stickiness going on in the center. So we're just going to dive into the nose. Whew. It smells beautiful. I mean, they talk about this kind of chocolate, orange thing. I don't get it. I don't know where that's coming from. But what did they talk about here? We talked about notes of chocolate, salted caramel, vanilla, pudding, nutmeg, toasted pecan friend, whatever. This vanilla chocolate combination is absolutely for real. Almost like Hershey syrup-esque in that kind of a sense. And there's a spirit, there's a hotness to this, there's a richness to this, but it doesn't come off like, I don't think it's going to be like overly hot on when you drink it. I think the way this beer, the viscosity of this beer, I think is going to temper a bit of that heat, add a little bit to it. Now, does it suffer from lack of carbonation? We're going to find out. But it's just exploding at the seams with rich, huge malts, rich, huge chocolate malts, very sweet syrup-like kind of maltiness, a big kind of mix of bourbon spiciness. There's some rye in there. There's a bunch of different stuff. So there's almost like a spiciness, like if you made blackstrap molasses, but substituted molasses for chocolate syrup, and added all the spices that you would typically add to molasses to make it blackstrap, whatever that is, I don't actually know. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting from it. So this kind of spicy, chocolatey vibes. You can talk me into vanilla, coconut, all these different things. But those are two big things that jump out at you. And I think that would jump out at pretty much anybody here, because we're dealing with a behemoth of a beer. Again, 12 and change. This smells more like a 18% brewery beer than a 12% barrel-aged beer. So, yeah, we're just going to dive in. Cheers, y'all. Man, if you could somehow, and we'll talk about this, if you could somehow get some carbonation in this thing, it might be the best barrel-aged beer I've ever had. Seriously. That being said, its utter lack of all carbonation, it's delicious. And I'm going to say this, and I usually don't like to compare beers to other beers, especially if they're not from the same brewery in a review, but I feel compelled to do this. This is the closest thing I've had to Sam Adams Triple Bock in my life. Now, let me put that in a little context here, because, one, I think that's an amazing beer. Most people ask about Sam Adams Triple Bock, they'd be like, that's disgusting, it's always sells in a bottle, yada, yada, yada. I'm not from that camp, I understand the reasoning, but, yeah. The cool thing about that beer is its richness, its density. And the reason why this reminds me of that is those two things, but also the lack of carbonation and viscosity. Triple Bock is is the ancient precursor to Utopias. It was Triple Bock, then it was Millennium, then it was Utopias. So that's the DNA of Utopias, so uncarbonated, high ABV spirit. That's what Triple Bock was. And it had just this crazy amount of richness to it. And density, again, viscosity, all the words I'm kind of using for this beer is very much present here. Dense, thick. You get those little bit of soy sauce vibes on this, to be perfectly honest with you. It's almost like you took like a humongous barrel-aged stout, and I know this would ruin it, but somehow reduced it. Reduced it in a pan, like when you reduce something down for a gravy. I would kind of bork the beer doing that, but if you somehow do that, icebox it, essentially, to living hell, probably. That'd probably be the way to do it. You icebox the crap out of a 12% beer. That's the only way I could see you getting this viscosity. But then again, if you did that, the beer wouldn't be 12%. I'm saying that, you know what I'm going to say right now? I want to see proof that this beer is 12%. Because I just can't wrap my brain around the viscosity of this beer at 12%. It's so bizarre. So bizarre. But anyway, back to the comparison that I don't like to do. Their flavor profiles are decently different, at least from memory, because, the last several Triple Bocks I've had have been decades old. They were brewed in, I believe, 93, 4, and 6, I think. So they're very, very old. So I'm going based off of 30-year-old memory here. It's a little bit more a perceptual sweetness here. More sweetness, actually, in Triple Bock, but the way the beer is bounced off. There's a little bit more nuance to this. I hesitate to say that because I think Tremblebock's a great beer, but there's a little bit more kind of delineation between chocolate, vanilla, coconut, barrel, spirit, all that kind of stuff. And keep in mind that, Tremblebock I don't believe was barrel aged at all. It was just a gigantic, huge beer. But the reason why I'm making these comparisons is because that beer is 20%. This is 12. And that's why I don't believe it's 12, but there's something endearing about it. There's something I absolutely love about this beer. And its absolute lack of carbonation makes me kind of I want to cry. Because if this had any semblance of any carbonation, like I said, it might be all-time, world-time, best barrel-aged beer I've ever had in my life. Easily. But it just doesn't have that carbonation. So it's just on Mount Rushmore for this year. Let's put it that way. It's so crazy. It's like I don't even know how to analogize it. It would be like it's like it being a gymnastic person. They're called gymnasts. It'd be like, watching an Olympic gymnast do the vault? And they completely fall. Like, they don't land it and they fall over at the end. But the routine they did in the air was so insane. You're like, we don't even care that they didn't land the goddamn thing. We're just going to give them, you win. And that's how I feel like this beer is. It's like, it did not stick the landing. It didn't stick the landing because it doesn't have any, 5% of carbonation. But the flavor profile is so profound and so rich and so fun and so, I would say, adulty. It's a sweet beer. 12%, big, huge, thick, viscous stout. It's going to be sweet. Comes off more score bar to me than Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And by that sense, I don't taste Reese's, but it has this just richness to it. This adulty, dessertiness to it. It's just not pastry on pastry on pastry. I wouldn't call this a pastry stout. I would call this they call it essentially a pastry stout by saying, chocolate dipped orange, salted caramel, vanilla pudding, nutmeg, toasted pecans. It is very much more of an adulty beer for me than anything else. And I dig it, man. And this is my little trick, okay? I'm going to make this beer taste awesome tonight. It tastes awesome as is. But whenever I get a criminally under carbonated barrel-aged stout, and it happens. Listen, if you drink aged beer like I do, if you love Hair of the Dog like I do, there's certain breweries that know how to do it. Koonin can do it. If you have like a very low personality, over-carbed barrel-aged stout, a little blending here I think goes a long way. If I were to take some barrel-aged beer like that usually has a big carb on it. I know it's a coffee stout, but willetized. It's a really great beer, but it's usually very carved. Dragon's Milk. Some of these, readily, easily foundable barrel-aged stouts, or even just non-barrel-aged stouts, but very, very carbonated stouts. A splash, maybe go 50-50 on this, maybe a little bit less to add a little bit of carbonation in this beer. It's a really fun little kind of twist on it. Brings out a lot more flavor and things like that. Anyway, some people will be like, you're bastardizing that beer. I'll do what I want. It's my beer. Anyway, back to the... to wrapping this up. This is a fantastic beer. I don't remember it being this lack of carbonation. The one I had, I think I've had it twice actually over the years, but I could be wrong. It could be like this every year. Chime in down there if that's the case. But man, even with that fatal fall, even without sticking that landing at the Olympics, it's still worthy of Mount Rushmore status and one of the better barrel-aged beers I've had this year. Just absolutely thick as thieves, 5C thick. Is bringing you just this level, multiple levels of chocolate. I didn't even really talk about the beer. I just talked about how much I liked it. There's just levels of different chocolate. Like, you've eaten all this chocolate over the years, and you think of chocolate as this, like, singular entity, that chocolate is chocolate. But then when you step back and think about all the chocolate you've eaten, you're like, I've had, like, so many different chocolate tastes. This is doing that. It's giving you everything from high-end chocolate, milk chocolate, dark chocolate, semi-sweet chocolate, cherry cordial chocolate. All the chocolates are belong to us. You get that nice spirit combination in here. Again, coconut, vanilla, a little bit of red fruit, decent amount of red fruit, but the beer's so big, it hides a little bit. They talked about oak tannins in here, absolutely 100%. Even with how thick this beer is, you get a little bit of dryness with how sweet it is. You're hitting all these different marks. That nuttiness they talk about, absolutely 100%. You get coffee vibes, even though there's not coffee in here. The salted caramel thing, there's like, I could even get down with that. It's like there's this minerality in the water. There's so many things going on in this beer. I was hyper focused on the on the lack of carbonation, but in the grand scheme of things, even with that being there, and it could vary from bottle to bottle, maybe it's just my bottle. Yeah, Mount Rushmore status. Value and availability, I want to say I paid $24.99 on this off the shelf in Pennsylvania, and leave you with, if you like what we like this beer, if you like barrel-aged stouts, even with the lack of carb, like I said, absolutely world-class stuff. And if you could get this, if you crack a bottle of this and it has a decent carb, yeah, all-timer. There you go. Review in the books. Hopefully you enjoyed. Down there, if you want to talk about it, Massive Beers, if you want to check me out doing the social media stuff, Beer Massif. Podcasting stuff. Weldwerks. Have you been to the brewery? Have you had their beers? Have you had this beer? Have you had previous versions? Have they been carved? Have you had this year's? Has this year's been carved for you? All that down there. Hopefully you enjoyed the review. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of thick right now. Hope to see you next time. Cheers, all. I'm going to post that.